Technology has been ever growing and ever changing. In the past couple of decades, and especially in the Western world, we have adapted electronic and digital technologies into our daily lives, whether that be through our cell phones, computers, or through our televisions. Throughout this documentary, we will be looking at one technology specifically, and that is television. Our group has decided to explore and document the effects of television on human rights throughout their various stages of life, starting from childhood up until senior living. Our research demonstrates that the positive and negative risks of viewing television, the effects of television has on our physical and mental health, and our personal lives. Television first emerged in the United States in 1950s, and in today's day and age we not only have one, but multiple televisions in almost every household. Whether or not we acknowledge it or not, television affects all of us. Let's look more closely at how it affects our more vulnerable population, children aged 2 to 10. As we know, children's rules regarding technology use are ultimately set by their guardians. It was interesting to discover in our research that children from low socioeconomic backgrounds spend more time watching television than those from high economic backgrounds. Similarly, children who consume the most television tend to have mothers with lower levels of education. Ultimately, our research indicated that children's viewing habits were very much associated with their parents as well. It is recommended that children aged 2 to 7 view a maximum of 2 hours of television per day, but in reality, children are viewing on average 2 to 3 hours per day. So what are the effects of all this viewing? Television viewing has been linked to many physical health issues in children, such as obesity and overweightness, which increases their risk of developing chronic diseases such as diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, and metabolic diseases. They also can develop headaches or vision problems due to overconsumption. However, when you take the content being viewed into consideration, there are some positive effects at hand. Findings indicate that children who consume television broadcasts aimed at being both educational and entertaining have resulted in greater vocabulary, language skills, and numeracy skills as children grow into their adolescence compared to children who had little or no access to TV. For children who view more violent content, they can typically be seen with having more aggressive and antisocial behaviors. Children are still in the earliest stages of development, and as a result are highly influenced by whatever behaviors they observe, both in real life or through their devices. They are at the mercy of their parents, who should be controlling the time and content limitations for their children in order to reap the more positive benefits of television. However, their parents need to be wary of their own viewing habits. We will now be exploring the effects that television has on adults aged 25 to 40 years old. When it comes to physical health, the dangers of overconsumption continue on into adulthood, as higher chances of developing chronic diseases are still a risk. Interestingly, if an individual is following health guidelines on the recommended amount of physical activity, then the amount of time spent watching television will not have great impacts on their physical health. With this generation, there has also been research on the impact that television has on mental health. The studies we found indicated that there was a correlation between screen viewing and depression among adults. Another study observed that there was a correlation between screen viewing and binge eating. Essentially, the more screen time an individual had, the higher the risks were. There was also a study conducted on possibly having a higher risk of developing Alzheimer's at a later age if consuming more than an average amount of television in middle adulthood. Then there's the aspect of the effects of television has on relationships. Surprisingly, our research found that specific genres of television have pretty positive effects on an individual's relationship. Viewing relationship conflicts on television allowed couples to learn and deal with their own conflicts in a calmer fashion. And couples who watched the drama genre of television reported having greater relationship satisfaction. There was, however, evidence that viewing television could also possibly create an unrealistic expectation for relationships as well. Lastly, we will be exploring the effects television has on our elderly population that are 65 years and older. On average, adults consume 4.5 hours of television per day, but when we observe the older population, research indicated that they consume a lot more. Our elders are watching TV for 25 to 30% of their waking hours. The effects this has on them seem to be very negative as a whole. Again, as through all the generations, chronic disease still poses a great threat. More specifically, older adults are at a greater risk of developing obesity and type 2 diabetes. They also tend to experience poor sleep quality and sleep disturbances. In regards to their mental health, they are at an increased risk of developing dementia, behavioral addiction, and engage less frequently in social and physical recreational activities. Television viewing can be considered highly addictive and may activate the brain's pleasure centers to certain viewers. Greater screen time has been found to correlate with greater unhappiness in their lives, as they are constantly comparing themselves to the people they are seeing on television as per the social comparison theory. They would consider the people on television of average stature and as a result view themselves more negatively as they don't measure up to this ideal average that they have painted in their heads. Our elderly population already has issues with feelings of isolation, and television viewing only further allows them to play into that. There's been research indicating that older adults can also be using television as a substitute for real companionship. To conclude, television viewing has various effects on different generations. Some of these effects are similar and some are drastically different. Through our findings, we have concluded that for all generations, like most things in life, television viewing should be enjoyed in moderation, remaining mindful of the content that is being viewed as well. It is also important to keep up with proper physical activity practices and disconnect in order to spend face-to-face time with those we care about. Television affects various aspects of our lives and health, and we just need to ensure we're putting ourselves before our entertainment needs.